glasses should be right there. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Deb, you want to walk us through the third quarter amendment, budget amendment?
Yep, you bet. Deb Anderson with the Board of Supervisors Office. So this is a time of year when we kind of close out the previous fiscal year and then clean up what we certified for the new year so that we're ready to go as the fiscal year starts. Okay. So just kind of closing out the prior year, our revenue did turn out better than we had budgeted. Our interest earnings came in about 1.3 million more than what was in the budget. Total of 11.3 million in interest earnings, which is really significantly higher than what we had seen in prior years. So really growing in that area. Also, the county attorney collections, structured fines, and DHS reimbursement came in greater than budget. So good news there.
Do you have those broken down into the 3 different areas?
I do. In your notebook, there's like a tab for each of the departments. And so if you looked at the county attorney one and CFYS, you would find those individual lines. Or I can pull them out for you later if you'd like. I can help you find those later, Jill.
Thank you.
And then on the expenditure side, we did have some expenditures that were less than budget. Again, you'd find the detail in your, well, you wouldn't find this general community family services one. So this is just multiple line items that they underspent. This is one when we certified the budget for 25-26, I mentioned that we needed to start right-sizing some of the appropriations, and CFYS is one in particular. This is closer than we have been in the past, so we're making progress on it. We'll still continue to work on that, though. It's just so many different line items, and that one's really hard to get that one closed because there are so many programs. And then elections budget, we spent less than budget by about 400,000. And we were able to eliminate the appropriation that we had set aside many years ago for the morgue of $6.9 million. There were several initiatives that we didn't finish in the prior fiscal year, so we're carrying them forward to 25-26. Emergency rental assistance that you've had a lot of resolutions on lately approving expenditure of those funds, so that occurred after the fiscal year began. So we're just carrying those forward and we're spending all those programs now. We do still have some interest earnings that remain to be expended.
What are those, the interest earnings?
It's around 2.5 million. The interest earnings are what's remaining. Interest earnings. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I can double check it afterwards, but yes. Okay. Then we also have ARPA funds that we are still carrying forward. This was the lost revenue replacement that we set aside to be used specifically for mental health, economic well-being, affordable housing, and water quality. We're still carrying forward some of the funds there. Mainly that's the DMU Sim Lab that is being paid out on a reimbursement basis. So that's still being paid out over time. 1.6 million of opioid settlement strategic objectives that were carried forward. Most of that was for recovery housing, and BHDS was simply waiting to see how the legislature progressed to make sure we weren't duplicating services. So we didn't do them last year. We're going to do it this year instead. And then in 22-23, we approved $2.5 million for emergency repairs tax relief. This was to increase eligibility in the emergency repairs program for elderly citizens. We're spending that very slowly, but still carrying forward that amount, the remaining unspent amount. And then also from the ARPA, we had set aside, I think it was $6 million for major owner-occupied home repair programs that we're running through NFC. That continues to carry forward. The revenue expenditure amounts there are different purely because of timing. In the end, it will be a net of 0 impact for us. Several capital projects that we're carrying forward. The Welcome Center construction of $3.7 million. Asset repair and replacement in the general services department, about 3.6 million. Vehicle replacement of 1.5. About half of that is for the wrecked vehicle reserve that we just haven't really had to dip into. We're continuing to carry that forward in case of wrecked vehicles occurring. In the Public Works Department, a carryover about 1.5 million for several bridge projects and equipments and consultants. And then the school radio amplifiers, we've set aside 1 million for that. We did spend about 300,000 of that last year, and the remainder will be spent this year through the Raycom contract. Okay, then with this amendment, some revenue changes that are being requested by the offices and departments. About $11 million coming in for the disability access point contract. On the next slide, you'll see that the exact same amount is being expended. And then an increase of 4.5 million in the jail per diem rate. That rate went from 105 to 160, expected to generate about $4.5 million in new revenue. Grant adjustments of 4.4 million, mostly that is in the public works area for HUD and EPA. 3.3 million increase for stream and wetland reimbursements and contributions. That's Jonathan Swanson's program that he continues to get funding from the state and from local governments. And you'll see on the next slide that he's also expending. This is kind of the match for that. And then conservation is projecting about 1.6 million in FEMA reimbursement for cleanup that they did because of storm damage in 2024. Again, we'll have an expenditure on the next slide for that. And the Life Services Center reimbursement from the city of Des Moines, they've agreed to pay for half of our expenditures there, so about 500,000 coming in.
Is that a year-to-year agreement, or is that for the life or multiple years?
I think it was a multi-year agreement. It's not year-to-year, it's multi. Increased detention reimbursement. Eric indicates that they've really kind of scoured their expenditures to find every eligible expense, and they've been able to come up with additional items that are eligible for reimbursement from the state, so great work there. And the health department increased fees and services. I think there was a resolution a few weeks ago increasing the fees for multiple things, and also they're doing additional services for immigration, physicals, and STD testing. And then we're closing out the Fund 10 as we transition to the Disability Access Point model instead of regional services. That was really hard to move. On the expense side, again, passing through the revenue that's coming in for the Disability Access Point contract, and then you see Jonathan's programs there, 5.8 million for stream and wetlands, and 3.8 million increase in grant adjustments, which are more than offset by grant revenues. We will be increasing the jail overtime, food, supplies, and medical. This is really reflective of the increased costs that we're receiving now through the jail per diem. So kind of getting everything where it should be. It has been in the past that in the final amendment, we adjust this appropriation. Given the increase coming in through the per diem, we're putting it in this first amendment, the cleanup amendment, to get it in the base appropriation and then move forward in future with this higher amount. Community development adjustments and rollovers. So this incorporates the changes that the board approved for the increased amounts for sponsorships and CBGs, and also rolls forward unexpended amounts from the prior year.
Can you go back to the jail overtime?
Mhm.
So we're cleaning it up now, so then we won't see that in every amendment, like this will be good. Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. This will be good for the whole year.
Correct, because when the certified budget is based, so next year's certified budget is based on this amendment that we do right now. When we put it in the third quarter amendment, it never gets put into the base because we've already certified next year's budget. So we keep bringing it back to you every year in the third quarter amendment. This will put it in the base going forward.
Thank you.
Then the 1.3 million increase for flood damage. This is, again, conservation. We saw an increase in FEMA revenue to offset that. $1.1 million NFC housing contribution. This was purely the 24-25 contribution was not paid out until 25-26 due to a change in staffing. Just a timing issue there. IT maintenance and subscription increase of about $400,000. This right sizes the appropriation to what we had actually incurred in the prior year, and adds a 3% increase. So this would be the one item that I think isn't necessarily truly a cleanup, but it's based on actual. So this, again, we get it into the base, so we don't have to keep coming back to you and asking for approval in future. This one's acceptable to you. An increase of about 300,000 for medical and lab supplies. That is because of increased services, as we mentioned on the previous slide, for immigration physicals and STD testing. And then again, transitioning out of Fund 10 for mental health and moving to the disability access point model instead. Then also, we had not adjusted the medical examiner's appropriation because we made those changes after we certified, so now we're reducing this budget to take away the staffing expenditures that are no longer being incurred. And while I have you here, I thought I'd talk about the upcoming bond issue, just to make sure you're aware of the components that will be in that. We will be doing 2 series. One of them will be tax exempt and one will be taxable. In the tax exempt, we'll be doing the capital improvements for anything that's not jail related, about $875,000. $1 million for the current year sanitary sewer standing appropriation, and then $5 million for Invest DSM. The Housing Trust Fund and the Neighborhood Finance Corporation will be paying from bonds that we issued in 2024, simply because we had to do a reallocation, which was on the agenda or actually will be on the agenda next week. When we issued 2024, we issued bonds for jail improvements and for the elevator at the Iowa Hall of Pride. After we issued bond, council recommended that we should have done those as taxable instead because of concerns about naming rights and private use, which would be a better use for taxable bonds. So we're taking those bonds from 2024, using them for NFC and housing instead. And then we'll reissue those bonds for the elevator and the jail improvements as taxable instead. So you'll see that in the taxable 2025D series.
So on a normal year, like if we hadn't had that switch, right? Do we bond for this Housing Trust Fund and Neighborhood Finance, or
We do.
we always bond for it?
We recently started doing that, yes, as in order to help out the general basic fund. We bond for it and we pay it off in a very short period of time.
How much extra does that cost us?
It really doesn't cost much. We try to pay it off in the exact same year that we've issued it. And also the levy in the debt service fund captures revenue from TIF. So we actually generate more per penny in that, and I would say it's more than a wash if we go ahead and if we levy through the debt service fund instead.
Even when you factor in the cost of levying the bonds?
Yep. The remaining items in the taxable issue will be the jail improvements for 24-25, and then the Polk County Water and Land Legacy Bond projects. We've decided just to issue those on a taxable basis going forward because there's been a lot of, Rich is very creative in how he uses those funds. We want to make sure he has the flexibility to use those funds as he sees most appropriate. So we're issuing those as taxable. Most of that would be, on this particular issuance, $7 million would be for the Icon water trails, so paid to Icon instead. And the remainder would be for some land acquisition, paved trails, and natural resources restoration. I did ask Rich if there would be additional operational costs associated with the land acquisitions. He indicated that not for the time being. He said eventually that there may be additional operational costs that he's asking for, but for the next few years, he would not be asking for more. So the next steps, next week, you would have a resolution authorizing publication of the amendment, and then the public hearing on that amendment would be October 7th. At the end of October, we start over on the 26-27 budget. On the bonds, next week, you'll have the public hearing to reallocate the 24 bonds. Then a few weeks later, there'll be a resolution authorizing the preliminary official statement. So that's the document that we send out to the bond market to market our bonds, and the board signs off on that for us. The bond sale will be October 20th. The next day, you'll approve that bond sale, and then a few weeks later, you would authorize issuance of the notes. And that is all I have. Any questions?
Questions for Deb? Good job. Lot of moving parts.
You know,
Thanks for keeping us organized. It's
That-
a lot there.
And Jill, I did misspeak, that's not gonna, the first question you asked, it won't be in your notebook. So, because it was last year's, and this is this year. So I will get you what you asked for the breakdown.
Yeah, can you send that to me, and then follow up, do we have the 2.5 or the 400,000 for the interest earnings on the ERA too?
You bet.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks, Deb. Next up, we have some discussion around Iowa pretrial release program and some proposals to reinstate this in Polk County. We have Sheriff Schneider leading this crew today, along with Chief Corey Williams. And then we have some guests, the Assistant Director, Mike Brown from the 5th District, and then the 5th District Supervisor, David Hauser, as well as Darren Cox from the 5th District, Iowa Department of Corrections. So I don't know how you want to order your group, but we'll let you lead the way, Sheriff.
All right, thank you, Chairman, Supervisors, Counselor. Appreciate you taking the time to hear our proposal. We think it's a good proposal. We think it's important. Want to lay out that, you know, we're talking pretrial release. We're talking about the sheriff's job is to keep people in jail that need to be in jail. With the pretrial release program, we've proven over the years that they can still wait before they go to trial because they're not convicted, and that they can be substantial in the community. They can continue to work. They can continue to help support their family, and we don't have to support them and feed them. So, and we have enough history that we think that only the people that should be out there are very well vetted, and we're not turning out folks into the community so the community wouldn't feel any more unsafe than they do on a regular day-to-day basis. So having said that, I'll turn it over to Corey. He'll get into the nitty-gritty, and then we brought these folks here, so if you had some tough questions that we couldn't answer, they'll be the ones that can answer them for you.
Excellent.
Good morning. Appreciate the opportunity to present to the board today. First slide is really just an overview of what the intensive pretrial release program is. Prior to the fall of 2023, intensive pretrial release was supported by Polk County. Pretrial release is still an ongoing program, but the code does not require the intensive pretrial release portion of it. So when the county made the decision in 23 to end that, there were some impacts of that we'll discuss further into this as we move on. Over the past 2 years, the Department of Corrections have steadily reduced the number of pretrial release supervisions due to the continuation of that intensive pretrial program. In November of 23, there were a total of 737 individuals under all levels, and that include level 4, which was the intensive pretrial release program. Level 1 through 3 is what's currently instated and still operating today. As of May of 25, that number has decreased by 26% to 545 individuals, and that's a reduction of nearly 200 people that would otherwise occupy jail beds. That reduction equates to approximately 6,000 fewer pretrial release days per month. Now, those days have to go somewhere, and they typically equate back to jail bed days. So from November of 23 to May of 25, the number of inmates, Polk County boards, and other counties has increased by 40% over that period. In November of 23, there were 846 out-of-county jail days per month, which surged to 3,743 days by May of 25, with an increase of 3,000 days per month total in that same time span. That comes at a great financial impact to the county. That out-of-county expense for fiscal year, yes, ma'am.
Can you back up a minute and tell us what the difference between these levels is? I'm unfamiliar with the pretrial
Yeah,
release, so
absolutely.
level 4, what does that mean?
So level 1 through 3 is required by code for the Department of Corrections to provide pretrial services. And they are your less supervised individuals that are released from jail by court order that go into the community under that supervision piece. A level 4 was the intensive pretrial release program. And that level 4 had home visits included, which also included contacts, multiple per week, and the DOC can correct me on that because I don't work for them, but as my understanding. But cutting out that level 4 level has decreased the participation in the program. The courts had a comfort level with that level of supervision, and without that, I believe that's why we're seeing a lot of the decrease at those lower levels, including,
Why did we cut it out?
I cannot answer that question
Who
for you
cut it
now.
out?
The board made a decision to cut that out.
Board cut it out.
Yep, in
Okay.
2023, yes, ma'am.
I don't think the whole board did that. That was a group decision through CJJC when
Okay.
we talked about that. And has the board, has any judges, don't they initiate what type of supervision they get?
So the judges now, the way the process works is they recommend whether they're pretrial or not.
Right.
And then the DOC determines what level they would go in based on their criminal history and other factors that weigh into that.
Does the judges have to sign off on that?
Of course they do.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
So the judges label them 1 to 3 or 1 through 4?
Nope, they label them eligible for pretrial and release on pretrial. And then the DOC determines what level they go to.
So the DOC determines level. And
Correct.
so, I'm still confused
But
why we
without,
lost level
without
4.
having a level 4, then those are the folks that couldn't be recommended at all. And I think DOC could probably tell you a little bit better than what we do, because we don't, but they vet them very well, and it is based on their criminal history, based on their charge of their crime, and whether they've, been a cooperating member before the pretrial release program.
Can those folks still post some kind of bond? Or is it most of these people don't have the financial resources?
Right. Most of those do not have financial resources, and they're looking, we don't know what's happening right now in the federal government. There's a proposal that everything's gonna be a cash bond, so we don't know that, but that hasn't trickled downstream into our state government yet, but so far, we've proven in the state government lately that we're following the things that are drifting down south out of Washington DC.
And so, correct me if I'm wrong, the level 4 is gonna be more serious offenders, ultimately spending more time in jail. And then what the county had done prior was subsidize the 5th Judicial District staffing so that they could staff that level 4 because it requires more supervision.
Supervised
Correct, sir.
release. And generally, they did some type of risk assessment as it related to the ability or the likelihood of reoffending or the risk to the community to release at some point.
Correct.
And then the supervised release to make sure there were checks in place.
Correct.
Okay.
Do you know how much we saved because we were subsidizing the release by cutting it?
I'm gonna get to that in the next slide. I believe.
Okay,
Might
now
answer
we're
your
caught
question.
up. Awesome.
So, and this is in relation to the out-of-county expenses, how we're looking at this. So for fiscal year 24-25, we spent 1.8 million total with an average 164 per month for out-of-county housing. That represents a 41% increase, or approximately 800,000 per year, assuming that the out-of-county rate continues to remain at that baseline $60 rate. And that is what other facilities are charging us to hold Polk County inmates due to the overpopulation piece. Any questions on that, ma'am? So the reduction of pretrial release supervisions over the past few years has likely contributed to that increase out of county jail population and associated expense. With fewer individuals on pretrial release, more people are occupying jail beds, leading to the higher demand for out-of-county placements and expenses.
But we're taking on federal people.
Yeah, we take on federal, yeah, that
But
is
we're
correct.
sending our people away. We're taking on federal people, so the beds, if we didn't take on federal people, we wouldn't send as many people away. So it's kind of circular, right?
Right, if you noticed what Deb brought forward, the increase in revenue at the jail,
Right?
that was from
I understand
federal.
why we're doing it, but,
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of counter to your argument now that we have too many people in the beds because we're bringing people in.
So it's twofold. There's the out-of-county expense, but how we used to quantify it is by how many days less by having intensive pretrial release. So we could quantify by how many people got out, saved us 500 jail days, and that has a price tag to it. So I think the county funded it $250,000, but we saved $1 million in jail days. So that's another way of looking at it. Out-of-county is one way, the other way is just jail days reduced by having intensive pretrial.
Probably prefer that
Yeah,
math.
we can get that very easily.
So Chief, what you're basically saying is the opportunity here for the county is with the reinstatement of this program, a potential to save taxpayers $1.8 million per year or $164,000 a month going forward with this program reinstated.
At the max, assuming the population accounted for all that piece, our population is higher than that. So really, it's 800,000 roughly savings in year for
Okay.
that investment.
And, but it goes back to my earlier question, like, what did we save when we quit subsidizing it? So what's that number? Does that take that into account?
Well,
the
when we were
1.89?
subsidizing, we don't know exactly what the county was putting into it, but we have negotiated with the Department of Corrections because they see the need for this as well, and they're willing to do it for their minimal, what it costs them to do it. And so that was a huge savings for us, and I think we're at a $200,000 mark when we're talking about spending well over 1.8 million, so.
So
Okay.
we're not subsidizing them to do this level 4?
Right now, we're not, no, they would just charge us, we're not subsidizing, but they would charge us what it costs them to employ the people that they need for that, which is about 250, 225,000. I can get you the exact number. So they were willing to do that for us, and we felt that was a pretty fair trade for what we can save the county as well as increase the folks that maybe help them keep them to be productive and not have to send them off to prison.
Okay, so going forward, it'd be the $1.8 million minus the $250-ish thousand to save, give to them that we would be saving,
So we would
if we were to reinstate it. Like, we're just
So-
talking money, then we have to talk.
Yep, so that
philosophy.
investment of 250, 260 would offset roughly that 150 inmates that we're holding now that is increased with the reduction of that program. Does that make sense? Which would equate to about 800,000 per fiscal year.
Not
Assuming,
1 point.
So
assuming-
800,000 is then minus the 260,000 we'd have to give them?
yes,
Okay, so we'd be saving 500,000-ish.
yeah, 5.5. Yep.
Does that number include, is that just the daily rate of out-of-county rate, or does that include the personnel time, the transport?
That is only daily rate, so it does not include deputy time, transportation time, back and forth trips, gas, vehicle maintenance, anything. That is strictly just the $60 per rate. There are other cost savings there that include with that as well, Supervisor, and that's a good point. But for the sake of this piece, we kept it simple as that, reduce down the out-of-county bed cost.
Wait, with the cost that Supervisor Holm is talking about, increase or decrease? Because we have to
We
transport
would
them now,
decrease.
so we wouldn't have to transport them.
Yes.
I see what you're saying.
So
Okay.
less transportation, less inmate shuffling, all those pieces would be in favor.
So philosophic, I mean, we know about all the savings. Philosophically, this allows individuals to get back to their lives, to get back to work, to await whatever's gonna come through the courts. And I guess, you know, from that standpoint, I think it's probably a better policy if people are reunited with family and jobs and back in the community. Is that the thinking behind this?
Absolutely, Supervisor. So the idea, there is cost savings in this proposal, but the other benefit is a reduction of jail population. And the other is that improved supervision for those that qualify for the program, go back to the community and do their pretrial status, waiting trial date, or disposition, and being productive members in the community in that process. So instead, or in lieu of roughly that 130, 150 people waiting in jail for that trial date piece. Yes, put people back in the community, give them an opportunity to show they succeed. 93% of our population goes back to the community anyway. So this idea of getting them back, make sure they don't lose their jobs, they don't lose their benefits, the impacts on their loved ones and family members all play into a part of that benefit that you can't really quantify in a cost savings, but it has a benefit to the community.
Okay, yes, but let's play devil's advocate for a minute and look at those numbers. I mean, this is the higher level of offenders. higher level of crime, do you have numbers that show what their recidivism is? It's even called recidivism if you're just back in the community waiting for
Sure.
trial?
I would
Numbers
defer
look
to
Safety
Mike
of
or Darren.
the community.
Yeah,
That's what I guess what I'm
absolutely.
asking.
Yes, so Dave Hauser, I'm the supervisor of the pretrial program at the jail. We report quarterly to CJCC, and I think you would find in those documents that our success rate is always in the 90%. So what we're looking at for pretrial is do folks show up for court, and because obviously that's a cost and that's a tax on community as well, but in a warrant status and those kind of things. Also, are they able to be out safely and not commit any crimes? So statistically, always in the 90th percentile, and that's across all levels.
That would be level 4 as well.
Correct. And just kind of back up and speak a little bit on the risk assessment that Supervisor McCoy mentioned. We do, we have a validated risk assessment that we use on everybody that we have determined is eligible for an interview. There are some folks that we do not interview, those that are on probation currently. They obviously, if they just have out-of-county charges, those kind of things, maybe they have an ISO or something like that. So we're not gonna be able to get them out anyway. So there are a few individuals that we don't interview, but those that we do, we collect that information, do a risk assessment to determine kind of what level they fit into, much like probation does. There's obviously lower risk probation, that folks that maybe this is their first charge. They're gonna kind of self-correct, figure things out, go to court, all the way up to obviously more risky folks that have a criminal history or more serious charges, those kind of things. So what we do is take that risk assessment, and then we let the judge know, Judge, we've interviewed this person, and this is kind of what we're thinking. This has all happened before initial occurrences every morning. And then the judge then decides whether or not the person can get out on pretrial release. Like Chief Williams said, they don't determine the level. They've left that up to us. Knowing that we have this risk assessment, and we're the professionals in the field, I guess. They let us decide that, much like they do with probation, parole, so that's kind of backed up a little bit.
So what do you,
Yes.
oh, go.
Is there a certain class or level of offense which is not, which disqualifies a person from intensive pretrial release?
So we would interview, even if, say, somebody had a murder charge. If they were otherwise eligible, we would still interview them, but we would recommend that they not be released at that time. They would then have to go through a process called a bond review, or their attorney would have to file a motion to the court, asking to change the bond conditions, at which point the county attorney and the defense attorney would make arguments to the court, and the judge would decide at that point. So there are charges, anything that involves a death, forcible felonies.
Forcible what?
Forcible felonies,
Okay.
robberies, those type of charges that we would still interview, but we would not recommend release immediately in initial appearance.
Can you give examples of what level 4 is? Like,
Sure. So it, like the sheriff said, it's our highest level. Level 4 requires a face-to-face appointment once a week.
no, what crimes would be considered level 4?
We don't classify them crimes. It's based on criminal history, employment, drug usage, all those things. You may have somebody charged with an assault, for example, that you might consider risky, just because it says an assault, that is a lower, may qualify for a level 1. You might have an OWI that has a criminal history that's 8 pages long, but it just says OWI
Because I'm just trying to figure out how bad is when a level 4, that 10% of people commit another crime while they're out. I mean, what's going on in the community at that point? That's what I was trying to figure out, what kind of crimes I was
Well,
looking
and
at. I
a
hear
lot
what
of
you're
that-
saying about how they assess it,
A
but,
lot of that, maybe 10% might be with the health. I mean, that would be an example of somebody not successful. But, so we're not saying that 10% goes out and commits the crimes. That just means they didn't successfully complete, which might be a failure to appear to court. It might be a new charge, but not all of that.
do you have those numbers that you can share?
Certainly.
Not on you, but
Certainly.
awesome. Thank you.
So are there hard and fast written guidelines, for example, that say someone who's charged with let's say a Class A felony is not eligible for intensive pretrial release?
It would be eligible for an interview, but we would not recommend they be released at that point. That would come at a later time for a judge to decide. As with anybody that's released from the jail, it's always the judge's decision. We're just making a recommendation.
Class A felony meaning a crime for which you might get life.
The reason we interview them then is because they're there. There's always gonna be a bond review, so rather than have to go back and find them, they're there then, so we interview them, we have the information, so when the bond review happens. But yes, we would not do that.
Statewide, what's happening on pretrial release by other counties, and how's this program being implemented statewide?
Statewide, it's a hodgepodge. As they've mentioned, level 1 through 3 is statutory, so there has to be some sort of pretrial release for every county. At this point, the only county that has a level 4 program like this is Blackhawk County, and they have a contract with the Department of Corrections, which we did for a number of years. So the county pays the Department of Corrections for the officers there.
Yeah.
But right now, that's the only county that has the level 4 outside of this.
Okay, so the idea is we're, by funding this program and establishing a contract with DOC, 5th District, it's to pay for that supervised release and to assure that folks are being checked in on and monitored, and that, the person we're releasing to the public is likely not going to reoffend during that time period, and allows them to get back to their life while they await whatever punishment or challenges they're gonna face with the courts in the future. I mean, I see this as a really progressive thing to do from that standpoint. I also see the cost savings that I think you've outlined. The potential downside is there's always risk with any release, I think you try to mitigate against the risk. You do the risk assessment, you do the interview, you ultimately have a judge looking at it to make a determination based upon, yeah.
Can I speak to that?
Yeah,
too?
yeah.
Or Supervisor?
Yeah.
So, yes, there's always a risk. The thing that you need to understand is that everybody's getting a bond anyway.
Right,
So the judges aren't, if somebody's charged with a new crime, they have to give them a bond.
right,
Now, they may set it high, they may not, they may, their standard bond, levels. So if somebody's able to post the bond, they're just out.
yes,
Without any supervision.
without any supervision, right.
So that's always the point I try to
Yeah.
make as well, that, yes, I understand, but there's no real, data that shows a cash bond or having a skin in the game, is any more effective than anything else. We're
So
there's no supervision.
currently, if they would be considered a level 4, but we don't have a level 4, we're not allowing a level 4, and they're given a bond, and they're getting out because they're bonding, they're already not counted in these beds. So, I mean, they're already taking care of the issue.
If they're getting out, yes, but I believe the data shows that they're not.
Yeah, the data shows that the increase of our out-of-county shuffle supports that those folks are not getting out of jail. They're not bonding out. That's what's driving the increase into our out-of-county expense.
Is that because the bond's being set too high, or?
Well, that depends on the judge, but I'm gonna guess, to Dave's point, in my experience with the courts, that those bonds are fairly consistent across the bond schedules based for those
Right.
charges. So we're talking about people that are
They don't want out.
unable to afford the cash bond system that might otherwise qualify for the program and be back in the community.
Is this an evidence-based practice? Level 4? Because I think we determined that when we were looking at this, and I don't know, it was Michelle Dix at the time, I think, I can't remember, Mike, you were there or not, when we talked about having level 4 and if it met the standards. I mean, we worry about recidivism, and if this is really something that we think, what we want to do is get them to make sure that they show up on time, go to their courts, and at the time, the state didn't think they really had the staffing to do the things that they need to do to make sure that, you know, they meet all whatever level 4 standards they gotta meet, once a week, FaceTime, do whatever they need to do. But I think we did a study then, and something that's, you know, it's not done elsewhere. They're looking at other things to make sure that they meet other standards.
Sure, so the difference, excuse me, between level 3 and 4 is it's called intensive pretrial, because the level of supervision is more intensive, because these individuals are scored higher in the assessment. So the difference between level 3 and 4 is going to be more face-to-face contact with people in homeless that do not get on level 3. So the officers that implement pretrial 3, which are two POs of the program, physically go out into the homes of the clients out on pretrial and do appointments. Talk about private, talk about family. That's because they score on that kind of level. That's the difference in services. And to be clear, Black Hawk Down is the exact same as us, except for we don't have a contract with them. So they're operating as we did, and they have been for many years. So they offer those services to Black Hawk County, and Black Hawk County pays the cost of the officer that they have. So we use school employees, we don't do that as a So when you say evidence-based, the evidence-based is the fact that higher level of risk needs more supervision than we require.
Go back, in your beginning slides, you discussed what happened in 2023. I'm just unclear on why and how the program, the intensive, ceased to exist.
You wanna take that one?
Well, I don't know if you really want us to touch on that, but I know there was a discussion, and Angela's probably very familiar with it, to see whether it was, she brought it up, cost-effective at the time, and I know that there was an issue with having office space for their folks, and different things that we were really not involved in, so I couldn't really comment to you, other than I know it was an issue they were trying to get worked out, and were unable to get it worked out, and we feel now that if we were able to work this out with the Department of Corrections by just covering the cost of the people to come and do the job. And I think that's why we're here again today, so.
So there was a change in state law moving away from community-based corrections and reorganizing that under the state control. And when that happened, there was,
Oh, that was the.
yeah, and so this I think is a reset. It's a new day. I think we want to reset this issue and do it in a way that is appropriate for the community, mitigates the risk, handles the intensive supervision that goes with the level 4, and then also make sure that folks that can be reunited with their families and back in the community, and jobs and other things can get on with that if they're not able to post a bond So I think overall, this is a sensible policy with lots of what I would say risk management from the perspective of taking a look at this in every way to provide opportunities to I think reduce our costs and ensure that folks are getting on with their life after an offense. So I appreciate the education today. This is a complex issue, but I think it's an important issue that we should be addressing and try to understand how these decisions impact real people and the costs associated with it. Because when you look at the number of days in jail that we're paying for, those are not productive days. And there's a cost to that, and if that can be mitigated by working cooperatively with DOC, I think it makes enormous sense, so.
Agreed, and one thing we didn't really touch on is, we talked about the cost of housing. We didn't talk about, most of these folks require medication and medical costs. Those boost our medical costs in the jail, and so that'll be another cost saving that's probably really not reflected in anything that we've talked about today.
Sure.
And you anticipate that 165,000 per month to keep going up?
Absolutely.
Okay, any other questions for our panel here today? Appreciate the information, and we'll take it under consideration as we look to the future here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think that is everything we had to cover today. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.